Welcome to Called Voices in STEM, the podcast that highlights the experiences, challenges, and career stories of women in STEM. Join us as we explore the stories of these inspiring women and learn more about the diverse contributions they are making to the world of science. Here is your host, Dr. Chloe Lim.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Chloe Lim, and you're listening to Called Voices in STEM, a podcast that highlights the experience, challenges, and career stories of culturally and linguistically diverse women in STEM. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land throughout Australia and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge the deep contribution that they make to the life of our city and our region. In this episode of the Called Voices in STEM podcast, I am very excited and honored to have Dr. Charis Teh with me today as our podcast guest. Charis is a cancer and immunology researcher in Australia. Her work focuses on developing and improving life-saving cancer immunotherapy strategies. Using preclinical models and cutting-edge technologies, she discovers the best strategies to train immune cells to hunt and destroy cancer cells with precision. A Victorian Cancer Agency mid-career fellow at the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute of Medical Research, WIHI, Charis holds a PhD from ANU, a Master in Public Health from University of Sydney, and Bachelor of Science Honours from ANU. As a mother to two young daughters, Charis strives to create a healthier future for the next generation. Her advocacy for women in STEM disciplines has been recognized by Superstar of STEM and 40 Under 40 Most Influential Asian Australian Awards. She partners with local schools to deliver science activities in the classroom and runs scientific discovery tours to encourage young girls to pursue STEM careers. So thank you so much, Charis, for joining us today. I can't believe how many degrees you have, actually. That's very interesting. So tell me a little bit more about your background and how you became interested in STEM.
Yeah, so I grew up in Malaysia and I pretty much did primary school and high school in Malaysia. I knew that health was very important. There were a lot of diseases that were around me. You know, schools get closed because of hand, foot, and mouth disease. You hear a lot of infectious disease in the news. I knew I was interested in health, but sort of didn't want to be a doctor because I was scared of needles and blood. And I didn't know what was out there. So when I got a chance to come to Australia for university, I did an undergrad degree in Australian National University. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I did a generic science degree. But what was really interesting about ANU is that we got to do these little science projects in labs. And I remember my first ever science project, stepping into the lab, was working with nematodes. So they're little worms. And the thing about these worms is because they are kind of like a very simple animal, a lot of the processes in them are very similar to important processes in humans. So the first ever project I did was to make the worms glow green, certain parts of the worms glow green, and then test what happens when we change the genes in that part of the worm. So I remember like using an eyelash to prick the worm and just looking under the microscope. And it was so fascinating to me that you could study something at a microscopic level. And so fascinating that this was even a job, that you could come into the lab and do these things. So I guess one thing led to another. I did a project on fruit flies, a project on cancer cells, and I just fell in love with that discovery science, and that's where I am today. So that led to my PhD and where I am today.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So we didn't do a PhD together at the same time, but we did PhD around the same time and at the same institute as well. Now, at that point in time, I know that you haven't started a master's in public health, but what prompted you to start that master's in public health?
Yeah, I remember sort of meeting you in the tissue culture room late at night when we were splitting cells, and that was the life of a PhD student. Like there was no day, there was no night. Yeah, how I started my master's. I finished my PhD and I still wasn't sure whether I wanted to go on like a academia track to like be a professor or what I wanted to do. So I found out that I could do a master's in public health sort of by distance, and I did that. And it sort of opened my world to what different facets of health was like. What was it like working for, what would it be like working for nonprofit organizations like WHO, the UN? What would it be like working for the government if you were managing the COVID pandemic or if you were managing food poisoning in a certain region? So it was quite eye opening to just understand that even within health itself, there were so many possibilities where I could create an impact. I guess I ended up staying in science and in the lab. So it showed you that that was what I was passionate about and what I truly followed. But I really enjoyed that experience. And I hope one day it still comes full circle that I'll be able to use that experiences or that knowledge that I gained in my public health training.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you said that you're really focused on your medical research career right now. So can you share with us a project or an achievement that you're particularly proud of in your STEM career?
Yeah, I think one thing really great about STEM is how multi cross country it can be, how international it can be. And one of the key milestones in my career was the time I got to spend in Stanford University in the US. So I went to the US to Stanford on a Fulbright scholarship as part of a technology exchange program. I learned a technology in Stanford that I brought back to Australia and used in Australia. But that whole experience of going to a place where it's pretty much the capital of, I guess, digital technology, the capital of startups, that's where Google is, that's where Apple is, that's where LinkedIn is, that's where all these things are founded. And you would sit in a cafe and you would just listen to people talk about their next startup or their next idea and watch people code. And yeah, I just remember that experience being pretty amazing, like another like eye-opening experience being there. And I know I was there for a very specific purpose to learn this particular technology. And I was like there for 7 months, and that was all I did. That was all I focused on. And then I came back. But then to experience yet another culture in another country and learn something new and bringing it back to Australia, that was a really cool experience that I will always remember.
So what was the biggest highlight for you when you were living in the US for 7 months?
That's a really good question. I guess for me, it was a time of my career where, when you're a student, you sort of like, you didn't have a lot of money. So, well, I didn't have a lot of money. So you lived very minimalistically. Like sometimes you live within your means. And the time when I was in the US was the time when I guess I was already earning a little bit of money. And I got to think a lot in that time, really ponder on, what I wanted in my life, in my career. So what I wanted in terms of work, what I wanted in terms of my fitness and my health, what I wanted to eat. And it was just a time when I felt this freedom of like learning how to become a new person based on my values in life. And I guess rethinking about what those values are, because you're in a new culture, so you're very open, you're very malleable, you're like, oh, people do things this way, maybe I should rethink this. And yeah, I was just very open to new experiences, whether it was trying new food or understanding a new culture that I hadn't been exposed to. I remember like setting different fitness goals as well when I was in the US, because I was like, oh, I can do all these new things and try these new things. I remember doing body pump. I remember doing kind of different fitness things as well to mix it up. And it was because I was in that mindset of everything is new. I can try a whole bunch of new things. There's no preconceptions. No one knows me here. I could do anything I want. And I also had the means to try new things, like the resources to try new things. So that was fun. It was a personal growth for me.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's the thing with experiencing a different country, experiencing different cultures. In fact, I think you actually explore different mindsets within that country as well, isn't it? The sort of beliefs that shape those people and how they behave and how they act. And I think, I can resonate totally about being a student and not having money to travel that much. Like, it's only when you're a postdoc, when you've got a little bit more money, you're being paid for what you're doing, that you can explore all these different things when you're in a different country. So that's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that you've had a fantastic experience there. So, you have all these great experiences, but have you faced some challenges while you were doing your STEM career? And was any of these challenges could be linked back to perhaps your cultural background in any way?
Yeah, I think people talk a lot about the glass ceiling and the bamboo ceiling. And people ask me, like, do you ever feel that there is a barrier for you to break through? And I hear so many people tell me stories of a barrier. I think a lot of times is my own belief and my own self doubt in myself. I know there are moments when I think that, oh, there's no way that I can do this. And it takes someone to pull me aside and say that you can do this. So one example was after I had my daughter and I went back to work at 6 months when she was 6 months old. It was a very tough time because you're finding who you are as a new mom. You're finding who you are at work. You're trying to find your feet again. And I remember just being very confused, not knowing sort of how to divide my time. I wanted to be the best version of myself at work, but I also wanted to be the best mom. And in a sense, being in two places, I felt guilty. And on the outside, it didn't seem like I didn't know what I was doing. But there were friends that could tell and could pull me to the side and be like, no, actually, how are you doing? Like it's normal to feel confused and sort of encourage me. And that's one example of a moment when I can really remember it was a struggle. And other moments are sometimes it's just the ability to speak up. I think I come from a culture that's being respectful sometimes is being in agreement with people. It's not saying things or not standing up for what you believe. And I sort of had to be encouraged to voice my opinions a lot. And I mean, it's not really sort of a bamboo ceiling. It's more like what's ingrained in my personality that I need to understand and try and find my voice, but be authentic about the way I find my voice, the way I would bring things up or the way I would say things. So I wouldn't say that it's a challenge. It's more trying to be creative around being authentically myself, but being able to fit in a society where they believe that confidence or leadership is a certain style and being able to change that. But I'm glad to say that I feel that the culture is changing. There's been a lot, especially in STEM, a lot of initiatives to not just build up women in STEM, but to encourage, to create communities that support each other in STEM. And that's been good. There's still a lot to do. People need to change their whole idea of what leadership is, to change the whole idea and the whole stereotype of what being in STEM is. But there are very positive changes that are happening right now.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Like same for me as well, being from the same background as you as well. You feel that you have to be respectful. You cannot disagree with your seniors. We've always been asked to let the elders speak first and hold yourself back. And you're not spoken to unless you've been asked. So all of these, I know, all this cultural upbringing really does. It can cause a barrier to how we view ourselves at work and how we can actually then speak up authentically at work. So I think that's a very important point. Now, you did talk about the idea of changing the whole idea of leadership. So in your opinion, then, what are the changes that need to happen in the STEM industry so that we can create more of these opportunities for the culturally diverse women to speak up more and be more authentic, be more themselves?
Yeah, I think that the traditional view of leadership is that there is a main leader and that person gets respected and determines the pace and the set of a team or an organization. And I feel that in my culture, for me, I love being collaborative. I love the idea that things are done as a team. Teams are done collectively together because as a team, you can leave a bigger legacy. You can make a greater impact. And I think that idea that having a team doesn't mean having people that are good at just one single thing. Every member is good at a different thing. And I've seen things change in STEM as well to really appreciate having a team and having this collaborative style of working. I think that's a good change, and that should change even more for people to understand that people bring different strengths into the team that can form really creative opinions, really creative solutions. I mean, that's what STEM is. It's finding creative solutions to problems that we're having. And yeah, I really would love it to change from that whole mentality of the I and it's my idea to like, it's our idea and we can work together collaboratively. We can leave a legacy together. And yeah, that pretty much sums up what I think right now.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think the challenges with academia sometimes is that it can be quite competitive, isn't it? And so people are afraid to share their ideas openly because they're afraid of being scooped. They're afraid that their ideas may be taken. And so that collaborative nature, sometimes you don't really see it. So I guess, in those sort of situations where, it's very hard for people to be open about their ideas, how can we then create the environment where people are more open to sharing and are more open to working together?
I guess it could come from in academia, probably from a funding situation where you start funding projects that are more involved in teams. But I think particularly if you come from a culturally diverse background and you have connections with different countries, it might be your opportunity to build a network that is international. So, for example, I know some people that are from China and they have really strong connections in China. So maybe their opinions and their value will be what they can pull in terms of, being very collaborative with someone from China or someone from Korea, someone from Japan, someone from Argentina, someone from Spain, whatever country you're from. So your voice is definitely able to be heard in a certain community that's your sphere of influence. And how can you pull that sphere of influence into where you are if you're culturally diverse? And I think that's where the power comes from, to just know that your voice doesn't have to just go into your direct team, but you can bring in other people that you have the power to influence.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the great thing about our academic research, medical research, is we have people all over the world working on different projects, but maybe just different angles of the project. And each group may have a specific specialty or a specific technique that they can contribute to the whole project as well. So like you said, you went to Stanford to study a specific technique, which you now brought back. And there's a lot of those opportunities for people to be collaborating and supporting each other in that way, isn't it? So that's fantastic. Yeah. So we're come to the end, close to the end of our session now. So what advice would you give to other women who are pursuing a career in STEM based on your experience?
I would say find something you're really passionate about, but as well look for mentors that have gone the path before you, because they might have a way of paving a way for you and also encouraging you with what they've been through. So look for your community, your people that are going to support you, whether it's someone directly involved in your work or people that will just uplift you. Yeah. Search for your sphere of influence and people that are interested in influencing you too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the thing. I think I remember growing up, I didn't actually have a lot of mentors, scientific mentors, I guess, if you want to call it. And I think if you don't have someone to increase your awareness of opportunities or give you feedback on how you're doing and how you can do things better, it can be a very long road, I think, because when you learn from your own mistakes, it takes a lot longer than learning from other people's mistakes. So yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, do you have ideas of where people can find that community that sphere of influence you're talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some people that are very active in social media can probably connect with people in social media, but there are different pockets of organizations with common interests that you can link in with. For me, kind of being in STEM, so I made a lot of connections through the Superstars of STEM program, and I'm currently doing a program called Homeward Bound. It's sort of a global women's leadership program. It's got women from all over the world. It's a leadership training program that then accumulates with an expedition to Antarctica. So there are these people, like these programs with people that have common interests that you can meet people that will really encourage you. And for me, it's been a huge thing. And I'm sure, Chloe, you have your people that you've met that you've, authored your book together or that are in like the balloon world that that are kind of connections that you make from common interests or like people that understand your vision and can resonate with it.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think, it's interesting, the different pockets of community that gather together based on a common interest. And I think I'm just thinking about how the person will also need to take that first step to look for those community as well, right? Because I think the idea of you're taking that personal responsibility to build that community, to reach out and find that community. I mean, you can't be sitting there and wait for people to come and find me, that sort of thing. I think it's important for people to realize that you have to go out and find that community that you resonate with, right? So no, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Charis, for sharing your stories and insights with us today. I think it's been really helpful to hear of how your journey of STEM started, that you did your PhD, but you're still a little bit unsure, and then you did a master's, but you still stayed in medical research, which I think a lot of people go through that sort of phase as well, where they're unsure about what they're doing after their PhD. And I think, based on what you've shared, you just have to try something and see how you go, and eventually you'll figure it out. You find something that lights you up and you keep going with that, hey? Then the other thing I think you talked about is how it's so important to be collaborative as well, how everyone should come together and be open to share ideas, because like you said, we're doing science because we want to improve the world. We want to improve the lives of people. We want to improve health. If you're doing medical research, you want to help people live a better quality of life. So it's so important to have that collaborative nature. And the other thing you shared is talking about finding that community that you resonate with. So I really encourage all our listeners to find that community, tap into that, find a mentor, find someone who can help you grow into that leadership position that you aspire to. So Charis, can you tell us how people can be connecting with you?
Yeah, you can search for me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I guess the links will be in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. I will add the links to the show notes for sure. So thanks again, Charis, for your time today. I really appreciate it. You've shared a lot of great insights today, which I'm sure the listeners will find very helpful.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. We've reached the end of our show, so thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others or leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about the things we've covered in the show or would like to follow my projects, please find me on Instagram and LinkedIn. Thanks for tuning in today, and I'll see you at the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Called Voices in STEM podcast. Get the show notes, links and resources from today's episode by visiting drchloelim.com.